In this video, we'll review the steps to closing floats and shared cash drawers in RMS. As a reminder, cash handling at closing should always be completed after the store is closed, locked, and all customers have exited the store. It's also important to make sure 2 people stay with the cash once removed from the terminal in order to count and validate cash counts. If closing multiple drawers at the same time, be sure to clearly label drawers so as not to get cash confused between them in the closing process. Before we get into the system details, let's define what a shared cash drawer is. It's not just a drawer shared between users, it's also shared between RMS and GST. Essentially, at each transaction, the user will select which drawer to use in the tendering process, and that drawer is where the cash will be put. RMS uses a term called a float. The float is the virtual register opened in order for a transaction to be processed. All users have the same access to each register. No register is assigned to an individual. The till is the physical insert that contains the cash and coins. These are taken to the safe after the store is closed. The cash drawer is the drawer that opens and closes and houses the till. At the end of the day, when you're ready to close, log into RMS. Once logged in, select the Sales tab. From the File menu, select Remove Float. Remember, the term float is referring to a virtual register. There may be a pop-up that closing won't save any changes. This is a reminder to finish out any transactions you may have started before continuing with the float removal. Click Yes to proceed. Next, you'll click the End of Day icon and enter your username and password. This step does not require manager credentials. A representative can close a float, but not the store. Next, the Float Balancing tab will open. From here, select the float you want to close and click Balance. The float must be in an idle status to close. Stores can reset the status of the float by selecting the float and pressing the Reset Float Status button. A screen comes up with 4 tabs. There'll only be 2 tabs that will be available to enter information, the Other Tenders tab and Float Summary tab. The other 2 will be grayed out. Start with the Other Tenders tab, which is where you'll want to enter non-cash forms of payment like credit and debit cards. In the physical count fields, enter the same amount displayed in the computer count fields. Then click the Float Summary tab. In the Float Summary tab, you'll see the same information from the Other Tenders tab, as these were the only values entered in for the float. You'll then click OK to continue. If the computed totals and the actual totals have a variance, there'll be a red X in the corner. This gives you a chance to go back and correct any amounts or entries that may have been incorrectly entered. Check your entries again and enter any corrected values if needed. Remember, the physical count and computer count fields should agree for each tender type listed. The next screen that will pop up is the Float Balancing Report, which is a receipt in PDF format. Hover over the PDF for the printer icon to come up, and then click Print. Then you'll click the X in the upper right corner to close the Float Balancing Report. This report is kept for inclusion in the end-of-day paperwork. Repeat these steps for all floats. For example, a store with 4 cash drawers should have 4 floats to close. In this example, there are 8 employees who worked this day among each of the 4 cash drawers. Since the floats were shared among users, there should be a float for each drawer, not each user. Stores that only have 1 drawer will see a similar setup. There will only be 1 float to close along with the 1 drawer. You'll know which ones have been completed by the flag of Balanced in the closing balance column. When all floats have been balanced, click the Cash Drawer Balancing tab. In this tab, you'll see each of the cash drawers used for the day. Select the drawer to close out and click Balance. This is where it's important to physically label each drawer, so it's easy to select the right one before balancing. The Cash Drawer Balancing screen will open with 4 tabs. 3 of the tabs are available, and the 4th tab, Other Tenders, is grayed out. In the first tab, Domestic Cash, type in the quantity of each denomination of cash and coins in each corresponding line. Enter all the cash in the till, including the starting till amount. Once you've entered all the cash in by denomination, you can see the amount totaled up in the physical count area. Next, click on the Next Day's Cash tab. In this tab, enter only the denominations of cash and coins that will stay in the till to make up the next day's float. Previously, when selecting the next day's float for GST tender stations, we would leave them at $0, but in the shared environment, we'll treat them the same as the RMS floats. This should be the standard till amount for your store. As you enter the amount for the next day's float, you'll notice the bank deposit field calculating the amount above the initial float amount. As you've completed the count, set aside any extra money as it will become the bank deposit for that day. Once you have all the denominations entered for the next day float amount, click on the Cash Drawer Summary tab, where you can review the total cash entered compared to the computed totals. If the computed totals and the actual totals have a variance, there will be a red X in the unbalanced column. This gives you a chance to go back and correct any amounts or entries that were incorrect. You have 3 opportunities to enter the correct amounts before the system will go forward with the entered values. The next screen that will pop up is the Cash Balancing Report, which is a receipt in PDF format. Hover over the PDF for the printer icon to come up and click Print. Then you'll click the X in the upper right corner to close the float balancing report. This report is kept for inclusion in the end-of-day paperwork. Repeat these steps for each shared cash drawer opened. From the reports printed, you should have 1 float balancing report and 1 cash drawer balancing report for each drawer closed. Once all floats and drawers have been closed, we can now close the store. From the end-of-day closing screen, click the Store Closing tab. There should be full reports already checked. Keep them checked and click Run Now. These reports will print out automatically and should be kept as stated in end-of-day paperwork requirements. If you had not closed all cash drawers before selecting Run Now, you'll get a notification to balance all floats and cash drawers prior to initiating store closing. In that case, you'll need to go back and close any open floats before proceeding. Otherwise, you're prompted to enter your username and password to complete the closing. This time, manager credentials are required to complete the store closing. After a successful login, you'll receive the notification that the store has now been closed successfully.